Hello and welcome to ShePropTalk. This is episode 2, and today I have with me the incredibly talented and wonderful Dahlia Darling Cosplay. Hello, welcome, and thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here with the lovely Beverly Downen, the true
Ah,
Amazoness.
oh my gosh, you're too kind. So you and I have known each other for like my whole cosplay life, basically. Because I remember, and I love this first story because I saw you and was very intimidated by you, which now I know. Now I know better. You're like the sweetest thing ever. But we were standing in line at Rose City Comic Con for the cosplay contest, and Brett and I were Lady Sif and Thor, I think, or we were something else, or I
I
can't quite remember.
remember. I think that was it. Yes.
Yeah, and you were there as Alice in Wonderland video
Alice
game.
from
Yeah.
like Alice Madness Returns, the
Okay,
bloody
yes.
one.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you guys listening out there, if you get a chance to go, I'm gonna make you go look at Dahlia's entire like her whole page and all of her costumes. But that particular one was so great because here is this young woman who is just covered with blood, and she's got this awesome hobby horse prop that is just also covered with blood. And did you have because I remember you made that with like a broom and some like it was very
A
like
broom, a mannequin head screwed
yeah.
onto the broom, and a lot of like furniture like foam.
Yeah.
And then I paper mache it all while I was in like a small college dorm.
Yeah, and it was absolutely amazing. And the thing that I remember the most about that was your presence. You just dominated that stage when you went out there, and
Yeah.
you placed. Didn't you win like
Yes.
the whole thing
I
kind of
won
a thing?
best hero award, which was
Ah,
really great because I had a lot
yeah.
of people confused because some didn't know the character and they're like, why'd this person get best hero? I'm like, my character's a hero though. Hold on. Like, I know I look bloody, but I protected children with it. Like
Yeah,
that's what
yeah.
it is. But yeah,
Oh,
it was
I
great.
just I just love that. I love that costume so much. So that was our introduction to Dahlia, and then we saw you again. Well, we got a chance to really get to talk to you and know you because
Mhm.
we gave you a ride up to Emerald City one year,
Yes.
and so we rode up and we rode back, and at that contest we both placed as well, which is
It
so
was great.
funny.
I love it.
Yeah, that was so funny. So, and then ever since then, it's been great because you live in the same town as me, so that's really nice. We
Yay.
have craft days sometimes, and kids
Hmm.
love you. Yeah, Dahlia is great. Everybody, you need to go find Dahlia's page and go
Oh,
stalk Dahlia.
thanks.
So let me bring up my questions because again, there's so much that I want to talk to you about.
Hmm.
Your voice in the cosplay community is one that I pay attention to because I like to think that you are a leader in this community for
Thank you.
people of color, and
Mhm.
that is something that we all need to be a lot better at. With we say that the cosplay community is an all accepting and tolerant community, but there are a lot of things that we could be doing a whole lot better.
Mhm.
So we don't have to have these conversations at some point, hopefully near in the future, but it has to be a constant part of our conversation so that
Mhm.
we can all learn how to be better at this. So I wanted to ask you,
Mhm.
how, as a community, can we do better to truly make this goal, to meet this goal? Like, what can we do? What can a non-VOC cosplayer like me, what
Mhm.
can I do right now to take steps to towards this goal?
So a lot of the things that we have to do is kind of analyze our cosplay community. And I like to say as we need a bit of a call-in culture rather than a call-out culture. One of the things that I personally am trying to make these steps towards is look at your local convention scene. See who the cosplay guests are. A lot of times we are still having a lot of white people in the focus and not a lot of minorities. And
Mhm.
the Pacific Northwest cosplay community still has a lot of people of color and very talented people of color, and
Mhm.
they deserve to get to be in the spotlight as well.
Mhm.
So one of the suggestions I have is that we need to start suggesting guests to cons. We
Hmm.
need to start asking for people at panels. That's
Hmm.
just one little minor step we can do as a community to just give minorities that platform, because a lot of people otherwise won't get invited to cons or they won't do panels. I personally have some wonderful friends who just didn't think they were important enough or cool enough to be a part of the guest scene. And we need to be better about that. And
Hmm.
we need to bring it to the convention's notice, because once again, a lot of times they don't notice.
Yeah.
Or it'll be a lot of white staff members that they just never think about that stuff.
Yeah.
And we need to make people think about it more. We need to have people be like, oh, hey, we got to get some diversity in here because it's important. And it says a lot. When cons do that, it definitely, I will hype up the con a lot, because I'm like, this is fantastic. They're taking it in the right step. And so that's just one way we can do that for sure.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and let's see. So, like, one of the other focuses of the community that is a bigger problem as a whole is we have a lot of people who will they use the line of making their cosplay accurate.
Hmm.
And a lot of people will darken their skin to cosplay a character
Hmm.
of color. And that's something that's very toxic and very, still has a lot of racist intent, even if it's done quote unquote well, as people
Hmm.
try to defend. And that's something that we need to start being better about standing up for.
Hmm.
There's a lot of cosplay community group pages, and oftentimes a person of color will be like, hey, this really hurts me, like, please don't do that. And we get a lot of white folks where it's not affected speaking up, saying, but I'm just doing it for accuracy, and like, but I'm just doing it, and da da da. And it's a lot of not listening to people
Hmm.
of color, and it's a lot of people who would never experience that racism, the hate crimes, a lot of what we as minorities deal with in the country. That it's like,
Hmm.
if they truly do care, and they truly, because I'll see people try to use we just want the world to be a better place, we just want to, but it's like, but you're not doing it that right way if you're not
Hmm.
listening to us.
Yeah.
Because you can still cosplay Storm and people will know who you are without changing your skin.
Hmm.
You can still cosplay Princess Tiana and wear her lovely green ball gown and still be
Hmm.
known as Tiana.
Hmm.
You just don't have to change your skin for that. And that's what we're trying to teach the larger community as a whole, is to just acknowledge that, stand up for other minorities, like, just be like, hey, what you did isn't okay.
Hmm.
It's wrong, but you can do better.
Hmm.
And that's the nice thing, is we will forgive people. It's all about, we just want these acts of racism to stop happening. We just want people to stop doing these things and be better and do
Yeah.
better. And I believe we can as a whole, for sure. Like, we just need to bring up that it's like, okay, the thing you did was embarrassing and it was wrong. It's okay, admit you're wrong, and we'll all move on and we'll
Hmm.
all do great. You could still cosplay these beautiful, wonderful characters and appreciate these minority characters and do it right. Just
Hmm.
don't change your skin for it, because there's a really good phrase that's, my culture is not your costume.
Hmm.
Like, you at the end of the day get to wash it off, as whereas we don't. And that's what we're trying to teach people, is to reach out. That's another thing, is just I've had a few people approach me about, how can I do better? Like, I
Hmm.
feel icky about this, or something feels off about this. How can I do it right? And
Hmm.
that's the best. I love that, because that means people are keeping their ears open
Hmm.
and they care. And that's a big deal. I love that. I'm like, tell me
Hmm.
you care. Tell me that you want to do it
Yeah.
right, because we will find a way for you to do it right without feeling weird about it. And that's
Yeah.
that's the important thing, because then everybody's happy. And then it shows that you love and respect the character, but you also are respecting minorities to do it right. And
Yeah.
that's what I feel is very important for it.
Yeah. I think you bring up so many important points here, and I think that there is an there I feel like there might be a little obstacle that some non POC cosplayers might think, like, well, I don't really know how to ask this question, and
Hmm.
if I ask the question, and is that not, I feel a little uncomfortable, like this is a little out of my
Hmm.
comfort range. But
Hmm.
I think it's important just to break through that, and to
Yes.
take that brave step forward, because I am sure, like from what you're telling me, that that kind of that that is so appreciated that you can
Hmm.
start the beginning of your project in the right direction and that it
Hmm.
becomes a learning process for you and that you will be teaching others
Hmm.
how to appropriately approach that and how to honor everyone's culture and avoid being having to have that conversation or having to have someone tell you, you really hurt me with this thing that you are
Yeah.
so proud of. I'm glad you're proud
Yeah.
of it, but it's kind of counter. Yeah, it's not working for what we need, the direction that we need to go in as a culture. Um,
Yes.
so yeah, well, good. Are is it? Can we? I know that I can come to you and ask you
Yeah.
questions, like all day
Mhm.
long. But would you be open for other people finding you on your page and asking you these questions?
I definitely don't mind, and I appreciate you asking for sure. And that's
Hmm.
a thing I want other people to reach out to others and other people of color about these things. I do always want people though to ask like, "Hey, do you have the energy for this?"
Yeah,
first,
that's a
because
great
that's
point.
another
Yeah.
thing. Yeah, because a lot of us we deal with racism all the time, and
Mhm.
it's sometimes exhausting. But
Sure.
me personally, I don't mind. But I definitely like I'll let you know if it's like, hey, I'm a little busy today, but I will definitely get back to you.
Yeah.
But as you said, I think there's a lot of people who are too scared to reach out, and it's like
Hmm.
it'll be okay. Those hard conversations are what we need,
Yeah.
and you being feeling weird about it or somebody feeling weird about it is important because that's the first step to change,
Yeah.
and that's very important. But yeah, I do not mind at all. I'm trying to think if there's any folks. There's also King Kitsu on Instagram, who's an amazing black cosplayer, and he has a very informative video about it too on his
Okay.
Instagram story. So there's some good folks and resources out there that people can look up, but I definitely don't mind being a point of action for people to come to at all.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah,
Oh my gosh.
yeah,
I'm gonna
of
have to go
course.
check that out. And I
Hmm.
do encourage people to go out there and just like Google it, like go
Hmm.
read about it. We can take that first step forward and educate ourselves as well. We don't need to wait for someone to tell us that we've done something wrong, like we're talking about. I think it's important to do our research
Hmm.
and to try to fold that into the fabric of who we are so that we can improve this community and make it awesome for everybody. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah.
That's all we want with cosplay is we all want escapism from the
Hmm.
world. And that's what we do is we love certain characters so much that we just want to have that fun of being them. And I want the community as a whole to work hard
Yes.
to make everyone feel happy and included. And that's what we need.
Yes. Well, speaking of the art of transformation,
Hmm.
um, I am so excited to talk to you about some of the things that I've just watched you grow over the last few years with the different kinds of techniques that you use to create your costumes. And something that I really admire about you is your body paint and the makeup the makeup that you use for your costumes. Because I've never done anything like this before, so I wanted to ask you because I know
Hmm.
that you've done a lot of this kind of work. One of the pieces that you've done that really resonated with me at first was your Sally um, from Nightmare Before Christmas.
Oh, yeah, the wedding Sally I did for
Yes,
ECC.
that was
Yes, I remember.
amazing. I know that's not the
Thank you.
only example of your work,
Yeah.
but have you done anything recently that has involved some body paint?
Um, Recently, I've actually been kind of taking a breather on it. It's definitely one of my favorite mediums because it's so transformative. So touching back onto the other topic really quick
Mhm.
is so definitely the bigger thing is that it's like, people of color aren't fantasy characters. We aren't skin colors, where it's like,
Mhm.
it's definitely okay to paint yourself pink, purple, green, yellow, like things
Sure.
that are just unreal. So definitely that's one I want to tie in really quick. Um, but yeah, so what I do is as I've kind of been known here for my corpse bride and
Yes.
Sally for
And
sure.
yes,
my
yes.
my two blue babes.
Yeah.
That's the one everyone remembers me for, and it's kind of nice.
Because they're
I don't
amazing.
mind. Yeah,
Oh my gosh.
so for body paint, what I do is I use water-based activated Mehron Paradise AQ,
Okay.
and it's a professional grade theater body paint. I use that because I remember ever since like Halloween was a thing, of course, to little kid me, and I tried the grease paint, and ooh, it felt gross. It felt icky. Like I didn't want to touch it.
Yeah.
Um, so that's what I like about the water base is you just use water,
Hmm.
and then it activates that way. Because I've had some friends try alcohol based, and while it does stay on very well, it's very hard to scrub off. And
Oh,
by the end
okay.
of the day at the con, I like to be able to just take two showers because the next day, I probably have to be at work
Yeah. Oh,
or
sure.
have a different costume. So I don't want
Right.
to like be the remainder of blue on me.
Right.
um,
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't
yeah.
realize that there were different kinds of body paint that water activated is a little easier to wash off than alcohol activated. That
Yeah.
sounds like what you're saying. I'm trying to
Definitely
like learn
more
all your
convenient.
secrets.
Yes, I will happily share. But yeah, definitely. Like that's why I recommend to cosplayers. I'm like, definitely go water based. Get
Hmm.
some good body sealant, because it's much better than alcohol based. Because you'll be scrubbing the heck out of your skin, and that's not fun.
So you mentioned the body sealant. So walk me through the steps of like putting from beginning to washing off, like if you don't mind, um,
Yeah, definitely.
applying and all of that. What do you recommend? What has worked for you?
Okay, so for me, what I have done, usually I just make sure you're freshly showered. I like to do that when I do body paint because I'm going to be in it all day.
Uh-huh. Yes.
um, so usually, if corpse bride was one of my most challenging ones because I will need somebody else for that
Hmm.
costume. So it will be me and a friend who will help as backup. I have the Paradise AQ Mehron body paint, and I just use I use the lid. So I take off the lid and I put a very small amount of water. Once you mess around with it a little bit, you'll tell that the consistency of water will change the way the paint works with you. Say for example, if you use too much, put it in the powder of the body paint and it will run. It'll be way too runny if you use too much water. And then that doesn't help your process at all. It will take a
Hmm.
lot longer. But if you use a small amount and just go for it, and the first thing I like to do to make mine look very seamless is I like to do a quick layer over whatever skin I have to cover with a streak. Like I just streak it on, just try to cover as much space as possible.
Okay, so
And
like
then,
a really quick layer is kind of
yeah,
what you're saying. Okay.
a quick layer that's just like okay, getting the skin the skin on my skin,
Yeah.
and then what I do is then I do the second layer. You can tell once it's dry. You can just like test pat it and you'll notice that it's not rubbing or going
Yeah.
anywhere. And then you do your second layer, which will be just dabbing it on. So you just try
Okay.
to like slowly like just dab it on, cover as much skin as you can, and that's what makes it look a lot more blended.
Okay.
um, so
And
you'll
what do you
definitely want to
use?
try to do two layers.
What do you use to dab it on? What is your application tool?
I use there's some circular sponges that you can use. There's a type of square type too as well. They're just makeup sponges.
Oh, okay.
Um, that's the nice thing, but like I just like using a circular one because it'll cover more skin than let's say a tiny one, just a flat
Uh-huh.
circular one.
Okay.
Um, so that's what I use to apply it. And let's see what else is there. Okay, so once that dries, what I like to do is it was funny because I noticed when I first did Corpse Bride, I was like, why does my face look a little flat? And I've
Hmm.
noticed that's a lot that we don't think about when we do body paint because we're like, oh, we're just doing this, and then we do whatever little eyeshadow or
Sure.
eyeliner.
Yeah.
But what I like to do is I take whatever eyeshadow is a little darker than, like, let's say the blue I'm using, and I'll use a dark blue, and I like to contour with it.
Uh-huh.
So
Oh,
I will
yeah.
do regular makeup contouring with like making my cheekbones pop, making my jawline pop, and especially for Corpse Bride and Sally, I had to like make my the little shoulder blades like or
Hmm.
shoulder bones I should say pop out,
Yeah.
and so just like some little shading, and it will make a huge difference because then you do your normal makeup as you would for any character, but then you get to just that depth will help your body paint show a lot more
So
than it would
are
otherwise.
Yeah. So are you actually applying the eyeshadow directly onto what you have already done, onto the base of the
Yes.
base makeup? Oh, okay. All right.
Yes, I apply
Cool.
it directly on. If you rub too hard, it will come off. So it's truly like just use a very gentle like eyeshadow brush or a fluffy brush just to blend it in.
Uh-huh.
Cause and of course you can always add the makeup back on. That's the nice thing
Oh,
is if you do
true.
mess up, let's say you got too much eyeshadow in the wrong spot,
Uh-huh.
you just take some water, take the body paint, put it on again, let it dry,
Oh
go
my
again.
gosh. Oh,
So that's
that's perfect.
the
Awesome.
nice thing is the media is a little bit more like forgiving.
Yeah.
Um, so then you don't have to worry about it. You just don't have to worry about mess ups.
Yeah.
Like you can still
Where
still make it work out.
where are we going, Dahlia?
uh, I need my charger, so I'm
Oh,
sorry.
okay. No, that's fine. Now I get to like look at your wall of cool art.
All the
Cool.
prints from conventions.
Oh my goodness.
There's
Very
way
cool.
too many now.
Well, that is very cool. So it sounds like what you really kind of want to do as well is practice. You want to practice contouring and applying this makeup to see not only how to apply it, but how long will take you to apply it. So I know that you've gone to cons many times too, and you've had to apply the body makeup on. So give us an
Yeah.
example of how of like timing and that kind of thing.
Okay. Luckily, I'm an early morning person. I'm an early bird. So I
Uh-huh.
tend to get up earlier than the cons happen. I try to give myself a leeway time of 2 hours,
Mhm.
but that's mostly because I'm very used to body paint that I can end up being a lot faster with it. Um, Oh yeah, and also like definitely use some sealant. Don't be
Mm.
that person that you get your body paint all over other costumes. So
Oh,
make
yeah,
sure to get
you.
some sealant spray. Don't
So,
use hairspray. I've heard there's always been a
oh,
like, oh, just use hairspray. That's not good. You're putting hairspray on your skin, guys. Don't do
no,
that.
no, no. So is there is a kind of a brand that you would use, like a sealant? Because I use Urban Decay makeup sealant. Is that something that would work or something
That's
else?
definitely what I use as well.
Oh, okay,
Any basic makeup sealant should be good. Just make
okay,
sure if you're going to be doing this character a lot, get more than a tiny bottle. Try to stock up just in
yeah,
case,
yeah,
because it's different per character. For Gamora, I just had to do my face and arms, but for Sally and Corpse Bride, it's a lot more
yeah,
on the body. So you want to make sure you just have enough.
yeah.
But yes, definitely, like any good makeup brand, concealer, sealing spray should be good.
Awesome, cool, yay! Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, I feel like I'm like one little tiny step closer to maybe doing some body makeup because I have the sealer.
Yes, yes, good. But oh yeah, so for cons, I try to just give myself some leeway time, just so you don't have to stress about it,
Yeah.
because you don't want to be rushing to the con, worried, freaking out. Definitely carry your body paint with you because you will need touch-ups later in the day. I'm one of those weird, lucky human beings that doesn't sweat that much, so
Oh my
people always go,
God.
"How are you not overheating?" And I'm like, "Oh,
I,
I'm fine." So definitely bring touch-ups though, just in case, because you never know what happens. I've had some bad incidents of carrying a friend's water bottle in my bag and it's spilling everywhere, and then my body paint
oh
rubbed off because
no.
I've had to dry it off. So that's what I'm saying. You
Oh.
never know what'll happen at a con, and you
Oh
want to
my
be
gosh.
prepared.
Oh my goodness.
Because let's say
Wow.
you're far away from your hotel room and you do not have the time to go back. So
Yeah,
bring it
holy
with you.
cow. Oh my gosh.
Mm.
Wow. So you kind of almost have to make like a little pocket just for the makeup to keep it separated and
Mm.
safe from everything else in your bag.
If I
You like
can
have like a
definitely give
makeup
everyone a
holster on your leg.
if I could definitely give everyone a makeup tip, it's like make sure your cosplay, or like just in general, make sure your cosplay has one pocket for your goodies,
Yes.
just in case. Like, I'm trying to get in that habit.
Yeah.
Like,
It's hard though. It's hard to remember.
I
It's like,
yeah.
thinking like, oh yeah, oh I maybe I'll be able to go to the bathroom in this costume, but maybe not. I'll just work it out. I'll figure it out later. It's more
Uh,
important for me to do, get X, Y, and Z done. So
I'll finish
uh,
sewing pants and then I'll be like, why didn't I sew pockets into this? I did this to myself. Like, oh,
pockets are important.
no.
Um, So cool. So you're at the con, you've gone through the entire day with your body makeup on, and now you're done and you have ripped off your costume because you're done and you just need to get back to normal and go to sleep. How do you remove all of this amazing makeup that you have applied?
Okay. So yeah, definitely the first thing I do before I hop in the shower is just take some basic like makeup remover, get your face done first. Cuz that's the other thing is you don't want to just hop in the shower cuz this stuff will get in your eyes. And luckily
Ugh.
like I've never had that incident because I was always like, "Wait, I need to clear this off."
Yeah. Oh, that's a
Only
good tip. Okay.
take the nice first step to make sure to get it all off of your face. And since it's water activated, you could just do a regular like scrub with soap and water,
Hmm.
or just makeup remover.
Yeah.
So do that first, and then that's a nice thing of why I recommend Mehron so much, is that it just comes off in the shower.
Hmm.
Definitely try water based if you can do it, because then you don't have to like sit there for hours trying to scrub off the alcohol based, because
Yeah.
that
So
stuff is hard.
so with the alcohol based, to remove it, would you still remove it with soap and water, or is there like an actual remover that you have to scrub on your skin to do it?
Believe there's some like name brand removers that come with the alcohol
Oh,
base that you
okay.
can get, but like you'd really have to use some makeup remover on that.
Yeah.
That would
Yeah.
not come off with just water. That's the hard part, is it's a longer process for sure.
Yeah. Wow. So maybe it's like waterproof if you're doing like a cosplay that has, you're going to be like running around in the rain.
Yeah,
So that kind of
which
body
is
paint could
definitely a
make you.
problem
Yeah.
here.
Yes. In the Pacific Northwest. Yes.
Yes.
Hello, Emerald City Comic Con in
Ugh,
March.
it's
We're
raining
not done with
every
the
time.
rain. Oh my gosh, talk about like cosplay fears. It's like, what happens if I can't go outside because I'm gonna
I
either
know.
overheat or I'm gonna melt or I'm gonna get wet. So,
Yep.
so how about what kind? And if you don't mind, I've always wondered, um, what does the shower look like when you're done showering all of this stuff off? Like,
It
is
is
it
very
like
blue.
is there okay? Is it easy
So
to wash off? Because I would just like, because I am the kind of person that would clean that up before. If I'm in a hotel or something, I never leave the kana like a mess or the hotel a mess. Is it easy to clean up?
yes, yes. Thankfully, since it's water based, it's so easy.
Okay.
It's not like we're hair dye where it's like, okay, you do got to scrub that when you're
Uh,
done.
yeah.
But
Yes.
definitely it comes off very easily, because
Okay.
exactly that. I don't like, I don't want to be that person giving them more work to do, especially
Uh,
with cosplayers at a con.
yeah.
So, if like, that's the funny thing, is you'll notice it'll get on the wall and you're like, how did this get over there? Like, this is so high up. What? But I'll just like try to do a look around and just clean it off. And
Yeah.
luckily, exactly, just use some paper and water and you're good. But yeah,
Oh,
definitely
awesome.
don't be that person. Be respectful.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. And a little while ago, and I can't remember which cosplayer said this, but they sent a picture or they posted a picture of a little tip that they left for the hotel staff. And if you can afford
Yeah.
it after a con, it is a really nice gesture that you can do for
Hmm.
them because even if you leave your room spotless,
Hmm.
there are probably going to be other folks that they have to clean up after that have not. So it's just a nice little, like let's make our cosplay community a positive one, and all those tiny little things that we can do along the way will definitely help out. Only
I
if you can
totally
do it,
agree.
if you can do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, cool. Oh my gosh. I feel like I have always had so many makeup questions about that. And so thank you for answering a bunch of those.
Yeah,
But
definitely.
body makeup isn't the only kind of painting that you do that I love.
Thank
You do incredible cell shading as well. Your
thank you.
Borderlands work is just always blows me away. So talk me through. I mean, I've actually watched you paint once,
Oh
and I
yeah,
was
I
just
did the jacket at your
yeah,
house. Yes.
yeah. I was just amazed at like how you had like just it's like blank canvas. I'm not afraid. I'm just diving in. I mean, I think there's like something magical about that. Like, so definitely, what kind of voodoo are you? Like, you're just talented, and I love that. Um,
Thank you.
but for someone who is interested in doing some cell shading, can you offer any tips for someone that might not know how to start?
Definitely. Okay. So I can walk you through the process of what I do, and I'll talk about two different processes. So there is the fabric based, and then there is the leather slash pleather based.
Oh.
So what you would then there's also the prop base. Okay, so let's go into it. So what you do is, for Borderlands cell shading, it is a comic book type of art style for those who haven't gotten into the video games. And what we love to do is to try and make it look as like a comic book as much
Hmm.
as possible. And what you do is, let's take a so what I did is I did Nisha Kadam from Borderlands, beautiful brown babe who is a sheriff. I love her. Um,
She's
so
incredible. And you
yeah,
are absolutely perfection. Yes.
thank you. um, so for let's say you take a fabric based vest, And for fabric, what I like to do is I like to use fabric paints. You can go to the craft store, Michael's, Joann's, and they'll have puff paint.
Hmm.
And I prefer this method instead of Sharpies because Sharpies eventually bleed out when
Hmm.
you wash it. They eventually dull. And I like to always think with my fabric of my costumes that I can pop
Hmm.
it in the washer or dryer because you
Yeah.
never know what will happen with your costume. So I try to approach it that way where I want to keep it vibrant
Hmm.
and colorful as much as possible. So take for example a vest, I buy the puff paint, and what you can do is just squeeze it out of the tube because you'll use a paintbrush. And the first part of the process is that you will take the. Also, sorry, I don't know if Facebook is chiming through there for notifications. I hope that wasn't gone through. No. But
No,
okay.
no, I'm not noticing any of that. Nope.
Okay,
No, we're
good.
good.
Just wanted to really
So,
quick.
so let
Okay.
me just clarify. So you basically take the paint out of the bottle. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay. All
Yes.
right.
For all of
Okay.
these methods, what you'd like to do is just take a paper plate or get a paint palette,
Hmm.
and you want to make sure you squeeze the colors out because it makes the process a lot easier when
Okay.
you're trying to paint
Sure.
garments, props. So kind of like a palette. So what you do is you'll take the garment, make sure to put cardboard on the inside because the paint will
Ah,
go through.
okay. Good
You
tip.
don't want it to go through the other side because then it becomes a little bleeding mess through it. Um, so what I start with is you're gonna want to get a white, a black, and a like slightly darker color of whatever the item is you're doing. And so what you will do first is you want to try to give it like shadow.
Hmm.
So whenever you look at clothing of a garment, you'll notice there'll be lines and creases, and
Hmm.
like you just follow that.
Hmm.
So what I like to do first is I will take, let's say the vest is white, I
Hmm.
will take a medium gray, and I'll just follow the lines of the garment, give it shadow and depth to it, and just also like make imaginary crinkles because that's the
Oh,
fun thing
okay.
about Borderlands is
Yeah.
you pretend that all of these crinkles are there as if you're like bending and moving on a garment, and so you do that first, and
Oh,
then you
that's a
let that
great tip.
dry.
That's a
Yeah,
really great tip to pretend because that's kind of what we're doing anyway. But like, yeah, to maybe look at a reference picture, or to think about how the fabric will drape on you, and
Mhm.
use that as a mental yeah, template or yeah, starting point.
Definitely. And the nice thing about a lot of Borderlands is if you do Google the characters, there are a lot of references.
Hmm.
So you can just look at the character and see what shadows that you're copying. And it's funny because it is literally making those shadows real on the garment. So after that medium step is done,
Hmm.
that first step is done, the second step is you would take the black and you would just make lines. So these lines are to just make it pop, just to show like the fold of the garment. And
Okay.
then once the black lines are done, you do the white lines just to show highlight.
Hmm.
And so you definitely want to practice with this maybe on like a scrap piece of garment or fabric.
Hmm.
Oh, and then the other fun thing too is to just like smear the black into random spots because Borderlands characters tend to look weathered
Hmm.
and like they're in a lot of dirt grease because they're bandits in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah. Yeah. There's
um,
no laundromats in Borderlands.
yeah, it's too dirty for that.
Yeah.
But
Can you
yes,
imagine all
so
the smells? Oh my
oh
God.
god, nobody is sugary sweet but Moxie. Everyone's all greasy.
You know, I feel like you should get some extra points if you find like deodorant or something, just to like, why isn't that part of the things like the items that you can find?
There you go. I love it.
Yeah, it says
Um,
me.
yeah. So that's the step for that is just you just need those basic colors of white, black, and a medium color to
Okay.
match it. And so that's for fabric. But what you want to do for props is you could just do the same thing, but you use acrylic paint. Um, but definitely to do the base, as we've talked about, is just to do Modge Podge first. Let's say if you're
Hmm.
doing foam or any type of like base for the paint to apply to, so it'll be
Okay.
a lot
And that and
better
that
to it.
seals it too. Yeah.
Yes, as
Yeah.
well. Yes.
Okay.
So you want to do that with the process. Sealant first, paint, then the sealant again. Um, so that's for like foam pieces. And for this is the other big one that I always want to tell people about is for a lot of cell shading is leather or pleather.
Hmm.
Um, so what you want to do is you want to get acetone.
Hmm.
That is nail polish remover, but it's more
Mm.
professional, heavy grade duty. You could find
Hmm.
it at like Fred Meyer's, any grocery store. Um, and you use the nail polish remover and, of course, wear a mask. and gloves. Make sure you're doing safety first.
Yes, absolutely.
And what you'll do is you'll take the garment, probably go outside in a well ventilated space, whatever you have, and apply the acetone to a paper towel or a regular towel, and you'll be scrubbing the garment with it.
Hmm.
This is to remove the protective sealant that all
Hmm.
jackets have.
Yes, and you know what? I didn't know about that when I was making my Amazon
Mhm.
warrior costume. And you know what? I think I did know about that a little bit, and I was just being lazy because the
That's okay.
con was happening. I was like, I don't have any of that right now. I don't have acetone. What is acetone? I don't have time to go get it. So I'm just gonna throw this glue on there. And oh my God, that was a really bad mistake because
Oh
all my glue fell apart and it was just generally terrible all around. So yes, preparing vinyl or pleather
no. Yes.
is so important if you're going to be gluing or painting. You need to remove that top layer. So thank you for saying that because it's
Yeah.
really important.
Definitely. Like I always try to think about costumes as I want this garment to last as much as possible. So what
Hmm.
can I do to do it right? Which is definitely acetone is a good step because your paint will eventually crinkle. And
Yeah.
that's why so for the next step, I recommend I forget the name, but it's a leather paint and it starts with an A. I think it's like Angler
Angelus is
Angelus.
Angelus.
There we go. Thank you.
Yes.
Angelus Leather
I love
Paint.
Angelus. That's what I used on my wasp
So good.
costume. Yeah, it's the best.
Yes.
It's the
I
best.
love it.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. So for the leather pieces, like exactly why I was saying there's three different ways to do it is you want to make sure you get the right type of paints for what you're doing. And the leather paints are actually pretty affordable, so I recommend that to whoever's doing it. But yeah, so you do the acetone, let that dry off, and then you do the leather paint with it. Do the same thing if you can pour out a little on a palette because it's a lot more like less stressful to get to
Hmm.
it than like just dipping in and out in the
Yeah.
item in the little tube. But yeah, so then for that you do the same thing of like the base, the lines, and then when you're done with your pieces, of course this doesn't apply to the fabric part, but for the foam and the leather jackets, make sure to spray it. That'll set everything. And there's like a type of clear fixative you can get at Blix or just any hardware store. Is just get a
Hmm.
clear coat fixative sealant
Hmm.
spray for that because then
Yeah.
you don't have to worry about it peeling off as much, and it makes a big difference.
Yeah, I think yeah, you're totally right. And one thing that I like to do with my props before I get started with any paint is to add a base layer of black, if that is what, like, if I want,
Yes.
if, because you're going to have eventually part of that's going to probably come through. It actually will help with the colors as well. So if you have a prop like a Borderlands prop, you could probably get away just fine with a base color as of black. But if you're doing something that is supposed to be a little bit lighter, do a base color of white or base color of
Yes.
whatever color you think is you want to show through. If you get a little scratch on that prop, that will help hide any of those scratches
Yes.
as you use that prop.
That is a fantastic point. Thank you for bringing that up. That's definitely. So I went to the Las Vegas Academy of the Arts, so I got to major in art, and that was a thing that was definitely important that I've applied to cosplay. Was let's say you wanted to do a very soft pink, and let's say your foam is mismatched,
Mm-hmm.
or let's say you get black foam. It would be better for you to do a white base coat, as you said,
Okay.
white
Yeah.
acrylic paint base coat, or let's say you're doing something steampunk and you need
Mm-hmm.
it a bit darker, or you want definitely for metallics, I recommend the black acrylic base coat because it will make it look more realistic than let's say if you did like if you wanted it more like a seamless bright gold, you do white underneath.
Yes.
Or if you wanted
Yeah.
it to look more realistic and darker, you definitely do the black, and it does make a big difference.
Yeah. Yeah.
Definitely for props.
And you wind up using less paint as well to create the like a solid color on top of that. Like if you're repainting there's actually someone in our SheProp group that had some vinyl boots that she was
Mhm.
repainting, and she was asking how to best go about that. And
Mhm.
I think everybody, there were a lot of folks that said, do a base layer of white so that you don't need to. I can't remember the color of the boots. They were
Mhm.
probably black or something, but do a couple layers of white and then put a cherry red on top, and that will kind of let the red pop a little bit more bright.
Mhm.
So that's a really good tip. I learned that tip recently, and I'm kind of wish I'd learned that a few years ago. Because
Definitely. It's one that if you don't have a
yeah,
background in art,
right,
then a lot of people won't know or they
yeah,
won't think about that stuff.
right,
Like, they just like, oh, I
yeah,
just paint this the color and it'll
right,
appear that color, right?
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
and then they apply
exactly.
pink to black and they're like, why does this look so dark? Why did I have
Right,
to do 5
right.
layers? Like,
Yeah. Or like, why can't I see my
definitely.
color? My metallics, a lot of the metallic paints, especially from Angelus, are a little bit thinner. So to
Mhm.
achieve that metallic color, you need more layers. And so if you start with like, if your ultimate goal is a gold, and you start with a black base, um, it's going to take you a while to that nice goal that you want. But anyway, we're totally getting off the subject here, but it's a good
No worries.
good
Good topic.
sidebar there. Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely.
So where were we? We were talking about getting into vinyls and painting and cell shading and all that.
hmm Borderlands is a lot of fun. I definitely recommend if
Yeah.
people want to do cell shading, do one costume of it because it's so cool to get to see yourself transform. The best compliments I've gotten is people coming up to me in my Borderlands costume saying, "My eyes hurt looking at you. Like you look unreal." And I'm like, "Oh, thank you."
Yay, that's perfect. That's exactly what I was going for. That's awesome. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Well, let's see. Your sewing is so fast, and the last costume that I saw you wearing was at Yukon, which is down in Eugene and here in Portland. And you patterned your own Sombra from
I did.
League of
Overwatch.
Overwatch. Oh my gosh, League of
I know
Legends.
that's
Somebody
so many
kill me
video
now.
games.
My goodness.
Okay, you're fine.
My stepkids would be so embarrassed right now because they're big Overwatch fans. But yeah, that was amazing. And so, did you pattern this? Did you pattern that whole thing? Tell me about the process that you use for that because I wanted to pour over the details of your costume and we just didn't get a chance to do that. So now I got to ask you all about it.
Yay! Okay. So I'll give a little background to the people listening. Is Sombra is a Mexican hacker from the video game Overwatch, and she is this badass like cyberpunk hacker, and her costume design is brilliant. And for this character, I've had a lot of people approach me because I've had to do a lot of new techniques for Sombra's classic skin. She has a side cut, which I've had a lot of people approach me about the wig I make for that. And that is one where I actually use my natural hair and I got like side cut on the side of my hair for the character. And I actually took a wig and split it, cut it in half.
Oh.
And I followed a really good YouTube tutorial by, I think it was Arta Wigs actually posted
Mhm.
their own tutorial for Sombra. And I dyed the wig myself. And that
Wow.
was because I could not find, like sometimes in cosplay, you have to ask yourself, you're like, is this something I can do? Is this something I feel comfortable trying?
Hmm.
Can I just buy it online? And
Yeah.
there's no shame, of course,
Right.
when you have to be like, I'd rather support somebody else and have them do this because I feel intimidated. And that's okay.
Yeah.
But for me, I looked at the wigs and they were all just different colors sewn in. And I was like, well, she has an ombre. So I want to do that transition of colors to the
Hmm.
wig. And it was terrifying. I've never dyed wigs before. I was like, this is a $50 wig. Like, I'm too scared.
Oh
Like, um,
gosh.
but it's fun to try.
Yeah.
You'll never learn until you try.
Yeah. Just dive
So
in.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And that's what I did. It was my second wig I ever dyed, and it actually
Oh
turned
my
out pretty
gosh.
well. So just for that, there's a lot of good tutorials on YouTube, but just a quick little walkthrough is I did first I got the wig wet, then I used a big pot specifically for dyeing. You never want to
Hmm.
use that pot again for food.
That's for sure. Yeah,
Specifically.
safety. Safety is it's as important as wearing a respirator. Do
hmm
not
hmm
put spaghetti in that pot afterward.
Yeah. No potatoes, don't do
Yeah.
it.
Go to
um,
Goodwill and pick up a pot.
yeah.
Don't go buy a new pot. Just go get a terrible
uh,
one from
a
Goodwill and
dentist used one
yeah.
for it.
Yeah.
And there's the RIT Dyemore, which is a polyester dye for a lot of like synthetic dye for wigs. And for that process, you just boil up the water, put in the amount of color you feel is good enough for it.
Hmm.
Experiment with some like wig wefts if you can.
Hmm. Hmm.
I just was that person and kind of went right into it and didn't.
Yeah, well, you're like
So
fearless when it comes to that. I admire that about you. I have to test everything like 6 or 7 times before I'll be like, okay, I can finally do this now. I feel comfortable, like, but I'm still on the inside, like screaming, like, oh my
no,
God.
I'm screaming on the inside too. um, but that was the good part is I just kind of dip dyed it, and that's how I got the colors I wanted. Is I dip dyed the lightest color first, then I hung it upside down after washing that out. Dip dyed the darker color, added more dye into the pot, and then dip dyed the darkest color.
Oh, wow.
So that's how I got that consistency, and then I washed it all out.
Oh.
So the process doesn't take long once you get the dyeing boiling pot going because it just takes a few minutes.
Hmm.
It adheres to the color really well.
Hmm.
Um, so that's how I did that little process for Sombra's wig. For the coat, that's been the biggest thing about Sombra is the bodysuits are luckily pretty available by some artists, and I definitely bought mine. There's no shame in
Hmm.
it.
No.
Um,
Yep.
but for her
Absolutely.
jacket, yeah, for her jacket, a lot of the colors just I didn't like the colors. A lot of them were not accurate to the dark sheen purple. So for a lot of my Sombra costumes, the two I've done so far is I've used Yaya Han's four-way stretch fabric.
Mm,
Um,
yes.
it is intimidating because I know it's pricey, so the only way I was able to get it was through a lot of Joanne sales.
Oh, I
And
am. I'm always there with my coupons. Be like, okay, let's do this.
let's do this
Getting coupons on
40%
my
off.
phone, getting coupons in the mail. Oh yeah.
Another person here with a coupon with the cash. Like,
Oh
we
my
got this.
God. If I'm not in line with coupons, I feel like a failure.
It's like I'm not prepared enough.
I
um,
know.
so what I did is I used the four-way stretch because it has this beautiful sheen to it, and the fabric is definitely thin. So what I did for my Sombra costumes is I got a thicker cotton base coat underneath.
Oh.
And so I've been sewing a lot for a while, and definitely what I recommend for people is the easiest way that I did it is to take some clothes in your closet and practice with that.
Hmm.
Practice by like laying down the shirt and cutting the exact same like cutout of the shirt. And that's
Hmm.
a good way to just start sewing and to learn to your body type.
Hmm.
Because for me personally, I don't like using McCall's or other patterns, which is nothing wrong against them. I
Hmm.
just look at the instructions and I get way too overwhelmed. So
Sure.
that's
No,
always
I
been
think
my
a lot of us do. Absolutely.
yeah,
If we don't speak that language, it's like looking at a different language completely, and it's very intimidating. Absolutely.
definitely. So a good thing for beginners or anyone who just can't wrap their head around that is to just experiment by copying the things you already have.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um,
That's a great tip.
Definitely. So for Sombra, what I did is you'll also want to get butcher paper is to transfer your patterns so you could keep that because
Hmm.
eventually I'm trying to work on opening my own store so I can have the
Oh,
Sombra patterns
good.
available
Yes.
for others because I've had a lot of people ask me about her patterns
Hmm.
because she's one of those characters where it's not readily accessible to get
Hmm.
a costume of. And I want people to have that because the nice thing about the video game is there's tons of different colors of the character.
Hmm.
So if you wanted to do a different alt skin of the character, you just use the same jacket pattern.
Yeah. Yeah, that's perfect.
um,
Yeah.
yeah. So definitely for it, I say experiment, and for Sombra, what I did is I'm kind of that person where I am fast, and I made it in 2 days before the
Oh
con.
my God. I'm hanging up on you. This interview is over.
I'm
Get
terrible.
out of here.
I'm
Oh
the
my God.
worst. um,
Oh
but
my God.
yes, for her, the things I did is it's kind of hard to go into in-depth patterning, but definitely what I say is experiment.
Hmm.
Try to copy the patterns you have in your own closet.
Hmm.
A lot of trying and learning.
Hmm.
But for Sombra, her character, the shape of her garments is very flat, and sometimes it's hard for a garment. Well, how should I put it? They're very clean, big pieces that are flat. Like, let's say she kind of has this weird, like, it looks like a skirt around
Uh-huh.
her hip, but it's
Uh-huh.
not. So what I did for my pieces is I used the Yaya Han fabric for the outer layer,
Hmm.
and then I used the cotton for the inner layer, like a lining for
Hmm.
like a jacket, for example. But to get that shape, that roundness, is some people use the type of like I forget. It's a fabric adhesive that's supposed to like stiff for collars.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I've used it's like a stiff interfacing, basically.
Interface. Yes,
Yeah,
thank you.
yeah.
Um,
There's all different kinds of thicknesses, and I didn't realize this until I made my Ravenna costume with that collar. There are so many different kinds of there's stretchy interfacing. There's heat bond like for a purse or something. All different kinds of weights. And actually, at my local Joann's, they have a whole section dedicated to interfacing, which is kind of overwhelming, but it's really nice to know that there are different options out there. But yes, to
Yeah.
get those shapes,
Yes.
the stiffer interfacing is perfect.
I definitely say for people to try interfacing. I actually haven't. So for Sombra, the way I've been doing it is I've been using rolls of craft foam because
Oh,
there's really cheap
perfect.
kids rolls that for her jacket I just clean dry any spots that happen to get dirty. But for that one, I just really needed a huge piece of interfacing that was very thick enough to keep that shape because that was
Mhm.
my worry too, was that a lot of interfacing isn't anywhere near as thin as the thinnest foam is for us.
Mhm. Mhm.
So that's what I did for that, and that's what I've been doing for a lot of fabric pieces lately.
Mhm.
For Alora from Voltron, she has some accessories on her that are one of them is a crown. So what I did is I took very thin craft foam to make the shape of the crown, and I actually sewed gold stretchy fabric on it, and
Oh,
that was a really great way to have a comfortable headpiece that could easily just get wrapped around your head with elastic. And so that's been my big revelation with this past year with cosplay, is just using craft foam for interfacing, and that's been a really fun way to get the thickness and the kind of shapes I want.
yeah, and it's inexpensive to
Exactly.
a
Yeah.
lot less expensive than buying interfacing at the fabric store. That is for sure. And yet, our friends over at TNT Cosplay Supply, they have a EVA 70 foam, which is, they say it's made for sewing, but I have
I've
used
heard.
also. It's great. It's a little stiffer.
Mhm.
It cuts like butter, but
Oh.
it's yeah, it's great. It's very strong.
Mhm.
But yeah, any kind of EVA foam or craft foam would work as that stabilizer, like you were saying. I have done
Definitely.
that as well, but not for a crown. But I'm gonna have to try that.
It's fun.
Yeah.
Like a little
Yay.
Sailor Moon tiara. It's great.
Yes. I love tiaras.
Hmm.
So, talking about awesome materials, what is your what you use so many different kinds of materials for all of your projects. I feel like um you are you've got so many feathers in your cap. But do you have a favorite material that you work with, or something that you try to that you default to? Like, I want to start this costume. Like, how do I get there? What's what's in your arsenal?
I would definitely have to say, in terms of sewing, anything that's stretchy, I tend to love to work with. But honestly, I think my favorite, just because of the variety that you can do with it, has to be Black Warbler.
Yeah.
And the lovely Beverly here talking to me is actually the one who got me to try Warbler, and I'm so happy I did because I was able to make a whole Cheshire Cat shield out of
Yeah.
it with your help.
Yeah.
And it was just so much fun because I love that about Warbler is that the fact that you can use any scraps, and the black Warbler is a lot less porous than the other kind too.
Yeah.
And that's a nice thing. I know that there's a lot of other um, like options out there now besides just black Warbler, so a little
Hmm.
cheaper ones. But I do have to admit that that's one of my favorite
Hmm.
materials to work with. If I had the money, I'd be working with it all the time.
Yeah.
But
It's
just because
great.
it's so fun, and it's kind of like just like clay sometimes, and like that's the nice thing. I definitely use a lot of foam once again to back the warbler so it's stiffer and doesn't cave
Hmm.
in on itself.
Hmm.
But definitely, I black warbler is my favorite. It's a lot of
Yeah.
fun.
Awesome. Yeah. I love my black warbler. I've been playing with zebra lately, which is another kind of a thermoplastic. But yeah, there are so many different kinds out there that I still haven't
Yeah,
tried. I guess Warbler has a Warbler's pearly art, which I really want to try. I guess it's
I've
just like
heard.
black Warbler, but it's just
Hmm.
white,
Hmm.
which could be sort of like what we were talking about earlier about paint and having that base color.
Hmm.
Um, I just want to try it. I want to try all the things.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Um,
I think the most challenging one for me, warbler wise, was the clear warbler. That was
mhm.
not as flexible as I thought, and they definitely pointed that out. Was just like, hey, just letting you know this does not adhere to itself, so you'll have to find other methods to make it work.
Yeah, and the activation temperature for transpa art, as they say,
Transfer.
is much higher than your standard thermoplastic. So if you are used to
Mm-hmm.
Warbler and you think that transpa art is going to be just like it, it's actually quite different. Like you were saying, it's also not entirely transparent.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're interested in looking at into transpa art, definitely check out their website and their tutorials on it because there's a certain way to use that. There are different applications to use that material
Yeah.
for.
Hmm.
So what kind of material would you love to learn how to use? Is there something that you haven't tried yet that you want to try?
Hmm. Um, let's see. Honestly, I just love to try more thermoplastics.
Hmm.
I want to try more armor, and that's the other area I really want to get more into. But it's a lot of like, how do I figure out how this will bend? How will I figure out
Hmm.
that this will stay there?
Hmm.
Also, definitely prosthetics. That's an area
Yeah.
I have not touched at all that I would love to get to learn how to mold for prosthetics and how to mold
Mhm.
for props. Because that seems like some areas that I definitely could grow and learn a
Mhm.
lot more in. Especially for certain characters, I love when
Mhm.
people will make elf ears or
Ah,
like I've
I
seen
know.
some Nigel Thornberry costumes where they give
Oh
him this
my
huge ridiculous nose and
gosh,
it's
I love
hilarious.
it. One of my favorite all-time costumes for this year is the
Mhm,
SheProp
mhm.
member that did the Nigel Thornberry
Yes.
Sailor Moon. Oh
Hmm.
my God,
It was great.
absolutely amazing.
I've
So
seen
great.
Popeye the Sailor Man along that
Oh,
too, and then Nigel Thornberry. It's so great. I love it.
it's
They're so
so
out of this
great.
world. It's
Oh my God, it's so
hilarious.
great. It's so inspiring to see folks using these materials in such fun ways. What's your next event? What's coming up for you? Where can we find you?
Okay, yeah. So we have. I'm gonna be going to. There's Walker Stalker Con. That one is specifically because there's the actress from Walking Dead, Rosita, is gonna be there.
Love
So I'm
her.
gonna bring my Rosita cosplay.
Yeah. Cool, cool.
Um, and then there's KatsuCon, which is it's the first time I've ever been to that con, but I'm excited to be going and to see a lot of friends that I haven't met yet. And definitely Emerald City Comic Con,
Hmm.
Komori Con, Sakura
Hmm.
Con. A lot of those are the ones I tend to go to since they're
Hmm.
all coming up. And it's
Hmm.
nice we're kind of in a con season break for a
Oh,
few months.
thank
Ooh,
goodness, says my wallet.
yeah, mine too.
Oh man.
Yeah, so definitely I will be at those locations. I always try to put on my profile which cons I'm going to be at next. So definitely.
Okay. Awesome. Well, yeah, speaking of that, where do we find you? Oh, and hang on one second, because you not only do cosplays, you also have you make amazing pieces. And do you have an Etsy shop? Do
Oh,
you have an
yes.
Etsy store?
Yes, I do. So for my social media and for the stuff I do,
Hmm.
for Instagram, you can find me at Dahlia Darling Cosplay. On Facebook, it's the same handle, Dahlia Darling Cosplay. And then I also have a separate page for my art, and that's Dahlia Darling Art. So that's the nice thing. My name's in most of it.
Yes. Yes.
And
So just search for Dahlia Darling. You'll find all the channels.
And then I definitely have an Etsy store right now that's mostly focused with my watercolor paintings because that's my
Hmm.
favorite medium to focus on lately.
Hmm.
A lot of fan art right now. And
Hmm.
I'm working on getting some more prints in there and cosmetic bags, which you have one of them. So
Yes.
I appreciate your support.
I love that bag so much. I take it with me everywhere to all the cons, so that bag's been with me to a
Heck yeah.
lot of different conventions.
Um,
Um,
but you could definitely find me there. And like
okay.
for those who haven't heard of me and don't know me yet, I am a Hispanic Puerto Rican cosplayer. I'm gender fluid. I go by she, he, they. So I
Hmm.
just want people to know that like I'm another person of color in the community, and
Yes.
I'm also a member of the LGBT community. So I'm like here for you. If you ever
Yes.
need to talk to me about cosplay fun stuff, I love supporting a lot of the people in our community for
Yes.
sure.
Excellent. And I admire that about you so much, Dahlia. Thank you for doing that for us. It's good to
Well,
know that we have some folks that we can approach about things that we might not feel that we can approach other people about, and that's important
yeah.
so thank you. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Is there anything that we didn't get a chance yet to talk about that you might want to say something about or bring up or chat about before we go?
Definitely. So one thing I wanted to bring up was that there's an important thing in the cosplay community, especially within our small community sometimes, is I want cosplayers that do have that big following, that do have that position of power, to realize they do have an influence. and their influence impacts other people. I've respected my friend Kawaii Besu,
Mm-hmm.
who's a fantastic Widowmaker cosplayer, is a white person who does use their social media power for good. And I appreciate that. Same with you starting SheProp and creating a good community, being the change we want to see in the world. And I'm glad that we have people who have done that. We've had a few scary incidences happen, and just as anywhere with a cosplay community, bad stuff's going to happen. But I've been very glad to see people with that following say, hey, this thing is not okay. We need to do better, or this person should do better. And all we want is that change. Mm-hmm. And so I'm glad that people in the community realize they do have some influence, and to get to use that to do better is very important. And I love seeing that. Like it's a good positive change in the role models, because even cosplay, you are a role model. Like
yeah.
For me, you're a fantastic role model. And I'm so glad to see a wonderful woman in the cosplay community get to be a part of that change and that spotlight. And that's definitely something I want to keep seeing. So I hope people will be more conscious of it and spread that love, that learning, that open-mindedness and respect towards others.
Yes, no, I think that's something that we can all do better with and all aspire to. Absolutely. So, we'll definitely. I'm going to add a link to that cosplayer because I want to check that out. I'm not sure that I follow her. So yeah, thank you so much, Dahlia.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you.
And my last question for you before we go is, now that we've talked about where we can find you, who should we be following?
Ooh.
Tell us who should we plug? Who inspires you? We wanna know, because we wanna extend our following, and so who should we go find?
Definitely. Okay. So the people I can think of are people who are closest to me in the community, and I encourage others to support other small people who are still starting, still new, or have been in the community and haven't gotten that attention. And, everybody gets to deserve to be encouraged. So for the people, for me is, I have my best friend, Jill, who is a wonderful cosplayer. They cosplay McCree, Shinso from My Hero Academia, and they go by, I believe their handle now is Body Double Cosplays.
Okay.
And, or I think it was Double an Opportunity. Either one of those. So it goes by there on Facebook and Instagram. And then I have my friend Shane and Mick. Shane goes by Shenanigans in
awesome.
a little pun there on Instagram, and her partner Mick goes by Serico Mick. And let's see who else in the community. There's so many amazing people.
Oh yes, yeah. I like that whole, like, find someone that is local to you and go follow them. Send them a wonderful message and tell them that you like their work. And
definitely, like I feel that we all just want encouragement. We're a lot of us here aren't here for the fame, and if you are here for the fame, that's okay. Do what makes you happy, of course. But definitely, what we all look for is interactions. We all want to excitedly get to meet people who share our interests and encourage each other. So I definitely say, if you can, find the people in your community, because we do have some amazing famous cosplayers, but I want people to help encourage those who are just starting out too and just finding their place as well.
Yes, absolutely. And speaking of that, shameless plug for our SheProp group. If you are female, or you identify as female, or you are non-binary, you are welcome in our group. Please come find us on Facebook, and we would love to hear from you. Even if you want to join and you don't want to show your cosplays or your builds, and you just want to lurk and learn, that is completely okay. We love that too. So we hope that we can see more of you coming our way. That would be awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Dahlia, for spending so much time with me today. I could
Of
talk to you
course.
forever, but
Me too.
we we've been talking for about an hour now, so
Oh my gosh.
I know time just
Exciting.
flies. Thank you so much for talking to us about body paint. We're gonna have I'm gonna try to put links to a lot of the stuff that we talked about, and I'm gonna put some links in there for how to find Dahlia. And yeah, thank you for listening, you guys. I hope that you have enjoyed this episode, and definitely please rate and subscribe, or however that goes. And we'll see you in the next episode. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Dahlia. Bye.